Would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Linda Nadolski. I live in Prescott, Arizona. I was born in actually Colorado, but we've lived in Arizona so long, it's home. I was at home one day and it was clear to me that the right side of my body went dead. And I had no idea what that meant. It was like there was no feeling or anything. And so my husband was coming home from work shortly, and I told him that, and actually I didn't tell him about the right side immediately. I said, I really want to go to the movie. And my thought process is if this is my imagination, then I would have to take my mind off of it and see if actually it's real or not. So he did take me to the movie, and then when we came out of the movie, he tells the story today. I said, I need to go to the doctor. And so we did go to the doctor, and I was nervous about it, and I know I was very nervous because my blood pressure was very high when they came. But the facts is that they did test me in the hospital emergency room, and I stayed overnight for MS or a stroke. They didn't know which one it was, and neither did I. And it was really it wasn't until 3 days later that they came back and said it was MS. And I wasn't really sure what that even meant, because it's something that's not hanging around. It's not a normal thing you see or hear about in life. So both of us, because Edward and I have been a team on this thing all along, we went the traditional way. I went to the neurologist, and he told me the medication to take, and his original diagnosis is that my form of MS was progressive, which is the worst form for you to have, but that was his diagnosis. And then we went to another doctor, and she put me on everyday MS medication. And to make the story a little shorter, I think I was on it for about 3 years. Partly we quit because Edward, my husband, told me I looked horrid, and the truth was I felt terrible. And so even though the medication was supposed to be helping me, it was not. I felt terrible. So I knew a doctor who was a friend, and he had an anecdotal story to tell me about. But that happened really several months after I had already decided to quit the traditional medication, because if I was going to feel that bad trying to get well, why try to get well? I mean, I wasn't getting anywhere, feeling horrible. Mm-hmm. So that's why we just decided to take the risk to quit. And then eventually, within a couple of months, this friend of mine who was a doctor had heard a story of somebody who was on MS, and it was a New York neurologist had known this young lady, and he had in fact developed a medication for, of all things, drug addicts. And they used it because it made the drug addict not like the effect of the drug.
Like not want it?
Not want it, right. Well, what ended up happening is that it was the counter effect on the drug addict was too tough. It was too hard. So they dropped it. And this particular doctor also worked with the gay community, and they had used that same medication on gay people, and they were using it in the large 50 meg doses, and even they found out the strength of it was prohibitive for a quality of life. People were feeling horribly. So this friend of mine suggested I try 3 megs, far from the 50, and see what it did. Because the doctor in New York had used that same 3 megs on somebody who was going into an exacerbation, which is a common MS term when all of a sudden all of your symptoms fire up, and they are probably going to be worse by the time the exacerbation is over. And so in that case, this patient in New York stopped. The exacerbation ceased. And so we decided to try it, and the recommended dosage ended up being 4 megs, so I started on 4. And then I spent some time online reading what other people had said about this stuff. And what I realized is that there were different opinions here, there, and everywhere. So the call on whether I used it was going to be ours personally. But so we decided to take a chance because we didn't think we could lose, and we did. And I've been on it ever since. Although I take 5 megs now, and I took and increased my dose a little bit at a time over the years, but I don't think I need any more. And I have had no new exacerbations in 20 years. In fact, after having this for 20 years, by all rights, a normal person would be in a wheelchair and completely unable to move. Mm-hmm. And even though I have to use the walker and all that stuff, I'm lucky. Yeah.
How has having MS affected like views of things that are not culturally acceptable in the United States? How has that changed?
I don't think that MS has affected any of that. You mentioned one time, and it probably bears repeating, we did go down to Mexico because we knew an acquaintance whose family was working at a university in Mexico, and we were treated extraordinarily well and with all kinds of expertise, so I don't ever want to be critical of Mexico. But I did go down there and try a different medication, and I tried it for it was probably almost 3 years. And I wasn't any better than I had been already on what I was on. But I felt willing to try it for the same reason I'm being critical of MS Society, that they don't try my stuff. You have to do this or you never learn.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of aspects do you appreciate with having MS? So like, it doesn't have to be like it could be like the small things, you know?
No, actually, this is an important thing, and I'm glad you asked this question. Daily, people are kind and wonderful to me. I go into a store, people hold the door open, and I've taken it on myself to always say thank you, because I want them to know that I recognized it, plus that positive going back and forth will help the world. That's all I can do. Mm-hmm. But I mean to tell you, you cannot imagine how kind people have been to me over the years. They step forward all the time. Mm-hmm. And that, in a way, is a gift.